I paid $50,000 for a wedding I never even saw." Those words weren't whispered in anger. They were shouted inside my chest, echoing so loudly that I couldn't hear anything else. Not the hum of the refrigerator, not the ticking of the old clock on the wall, not even my own breath. My name is Harold Whitman, and I am 58 years old. I spent most of my life working double shifts, patching roofs in the summer heat, and shoveling snow in the dead of winter, also my children could have a life better than mine. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the day my daughter looked me in the eye and told me I had missed her wedding. For months, I had planned alongside her. I had picked out flower arrangements, sent deposits to the catering company, and even drove 3 hours to a vineyard she loved just to make sure the wine was delivered on time. I imagined the moment I would walk her down the aisle, my arm steady, her hand trembling. I pictured the music swelling, the eyes of strangers admiring us, the proud father giving his little girl away. That image had been my comfort during long, aching nights at work. I thought about it every time my back hurt from hauling shingles or my knees buckled on icy ladders. I thought about it when I pulled money from my retirement savings, my only safety net, because she said the wedding had to be perfect. But when the date finally arrived, I received no call, no car waiting outside to pick me up, no instructions on where to stand. I sat by the window of my small house in Columbus, Ohio, dressed in the only suit I owned, waiting for a ride that never came. I told myself maybe she was running late, maybe plans had shifted, maybe there had been some mistake. My neighbor, an old widow named Mrs. Callahan, saw me pacing by the window and asked, "Aren't you supposed to be at the wedding today?" I forced a smile, my throat tight, and told her, "They'll be here soon." But deep down, something inside me was already cracking. 5 days later, she came to my door, her hair still pinned in curls, her nails painted ivory. "Dad," she said casually, like she was telling me about a trip to the store, "the wedding was beautiful. We just kept it small. Just family. Just family." The words stabbed me in the chest. I am her father. I raised her when her mother left. I taught her to ride a bike, bandaged her scraped knees, stayed up through nights of fever. When she was 14 and cried because kids at school teased her, I sat on her bed and read her poetry until she laughed again. And now she was telling me I wasn't family. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I stood there, silent, gripping the frame of the door so tightly that the wood dug into my palm. She avoided my eyes, looking instead at her phone, tapping her nails against the case. Her new husband, his name was Vincent, though I still called him the boy, waited in the car. He never looked my way. They had built a life where I was no longer invited, and they did it right in front of me. The weeks that followed were hollow. My house, once filled with her laughter and music, echoed with silence. I found myself scrolling through Facebook late at night, staring at pictures from the wedding I never attended. There she was, glowing in white lace, Vincent beaming beside her, his family gathered proudly around. I zoomed in on the photos, looking for any sign of me, any hint that I was remembered. But the chair I thought I'd sit in was empty, the space I should have filled was given to someone else. That emptiness crawled into me, spreading like frost across my heart. I began to wonder if all my sacrifices meant nothing. I thought about the baseball games I missed to work overtime, the vacations I never took because braces had to be paid for, the weekends I spent repairing my own roof instead of hiring help so she could attend piano lessons. I thought about the way I skipped meals some nights so she could have the dress she wanted for prom. A father's love is supposed to be invisible, hidden in every bill paid, every meal cooked, every hour of sleep lost. But when she erased me from her wedding, it felt like she had erased my entire life. Then, one evening, nearly a month later, she knocked on my door again. This time, she wasn't glowing. Her eyes were red, her shoulders slumped, and her voice cracked like a child's. "Dad, we're behind on the mortgage. The bank sent a letter. We don't know what to do. Can you help us? Please." I studied her face, the desperation, the sudden need for the father she had cast aside. Behind her, Vincent stood stiffly, his hands in his pockets, his jaw tight as if asking me was beneath him. Something inside me shifted. For the first time in my life, I didn't rush to ease her pain. I didn't reach for my wallet. I leaned against the doorframe, feeling the cool would press into my back, and allowed silence to fill the space between us. I thought of every year I had given, every dream I had buried, every wrinkle on my face carved by worry for her. My lips curved into a faint smile, not of joy but of realization. "The family will pay it," I said slowly. She blinked, confused, glancing at Vincent, who frowned. But I wasn't talking about her new family, or his. I wasn't even talking about money. I was talking about something else, something I had never dared to embrace before. For 58 years, I carried this family on my back. Now, it was time they felt what it meant when I stepped aside. What I planned next would change everything. The night after my daughter asked me to save her mortgage, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee, staring at my hands. They were rough, scarred from years of hard work, calloused from roofing shingles, splintered wood, and rusted tools. These were the hands that raised her, that held her tiny body the day she was born, that braided her hair when her mother disappeared, that worked themselves raw to put food on the table. Every scar was a story of sacrifice. Every line etched into my skin was a memory. I remembered being 30 years old, holding a screaming baby in one arm while filling out bills with the other. Her mother, Anna, had left a note on the counter one morning, "I can't do this anymore." That was all. No explanation, no goodbye kiss for her child, just silence and a door closing behind her. From that moment on, it was me and my daughter against the world. I didn't complain. I didn't drink myself numb. I learned how to braid hair from a neighbor, how to cook macaroni and cheese without burning the pan, how to clean vomit at 2 in the morning when she had the flu. I became mother and father all at once, and I told myself it was enough. Money was never easy. I worked construction by day and delivered newspapers at night. When the factory shut down in town, I drove 2 hours each way to a roofing job in another county just to keep the lights on. There were nights I came home with bleeding knuckles, my shirt soaked with sweat, only to find her waiting up for me with her homework spread across the table. She would ask me to check her math, and though my eyes burned with exhaustion, I always sat down beside her. I wanted her to believe she could do anything. I wanted her to see me as her rock, the one thing in her life that never moved. She grew fast. By the time she was 10, she had outgrown the small house we lived in, but I made it feel bigger with laughter. We had traditions: Friday night pizza, Saturday morning garage sales, and Sunday drives with no destination. She would chatter about her dreams, how she wanted to be a lawyer or maybe an artist, and I would nod, promising her that she could be both if she wanted. She was my reason to keep breathing when my lungs ached from years of dust and shingles. High school came, and with it, the first cracks. She started wanting more: designer clothes, the newest phone, trips with friends I couldn't afford. I gave what I could, but sometimes she looked at me with those eyes that asked, "Why can't you do more?" I swallowed the guilt, telling myself that one day, when she saw the truth, she would understand. I thought love would be enough to bridge the gap between what I could provide and what she wanted. Then came Vincent. I met him when she was 19. He came from a family with money, real money. His father owned a dealership, his mother ran a boutique downtown. They lived in a house where the floors didn't creak, where the walls smelled like fresh paint instead of mildew. He was polite the first few times, shaking my hand firmly, calling me sir. But I could see it in his eyes. Pity. He pitied me for my worn boots, for my rusted truck, for my small house with its crooked porch steps. He never said it out loud, but I felt it. And worse, I saw my daughter start to feel it too. At first, she defended me. When Vincent made a joke about my truck breaking down, she snapped, "That truck took me to every soccer game, every recital. Don't talk about it." But over time, little by little, his voice became louder in her ear than mine. When she got engaged, she told me over the phone, not in person. She said Vincent's family was planning most of the wedding, and though she sounded excited, there was hesitation in her tone that I didn't fully understand. I offered to pay, to help however I could, and she laughed nervously, saying, "Dad, you've done enough." I didn't realize then that those words were the beginning of my replacement. When she asked me for money months later, saying the wedding needed to be perfect, I didn't hesitate. I drained part of my retirement account, the same account I had built penny by penny for the day I could finally rest these aching bones. I told myself it was worth it, that seeing her happy on her wedding day would be my reward. Every time I looked at my empty balance, I thought about the smile on her face, and it dulled the pain. The night before the supposed wedding, I ironed my suit, polished my shoes, and rehearsed walking her down the aisle in the living room. I pictured her arm looped through mine, her veil brushing against my shoulder. But instead, I found myself standing by a window, watching the sun set, waiting for a ride that never came. That betrayal burned deeper than anything. It wasn't just missing the wedding, it was the message it carried. I was no longer necessary. My life, my sacrifices, my very presence had been erased, rewritten by another family who believed they could provide better. And maybe in her eyes they could. But it didn't erase the nights I stayed awake when she was sick, or the mornings I walked her to the bus stop in the snow, or the times I went without so she could have enough. Now, as I sat at the kitchen table, I thought about the irony. She had excluded me when it was about joy, but she came running when it was about survival. They had spent $50,000 of my money on flowers, dresses, and wine, and now they couldn't keep a roof over their heads. Vincent, the man who pitied me, couldn't even pay his own mortgage. And my daughter, the same one who once clutched my hand when thunderstorms scared her, now stood outside begging me for help again. I wasn't angry in that moment. I was calm. Calm in a way that scared me. I realized something that night. Love without respect is nothing but chains. For decades, I had been the man who gave without question, who poured himself out until there was nothing left. And still, it was never enough. Maybe it was time for me to let them feel the emptiness I had lived with for years. Maybe it was time to show them that the father they had dismissed wasn't weak. I leaned back in my chair, my hands folded over one another. For years, I thought strength meant sacrifice. But now, strength meant something different. It meant drawing a line. It meant not letting them use me anymore. It meant reclaiming the dignity they had stripped from me. When the knock came again the next morning, I didn't rush to answer it. I let them wait on the porch. Vincent shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze, while my daughter wrung her hands, her voice cracking with desperation. "Dad, the bank's going to take the house. Please, you're the only one we can turn to." I finally opened the door, my face unreadable. "The family will pay it," I said again. She frowned, confused, asking what I meant. But I didn't explain. Some truths don't need to be shouted. They need to be lived. That was the night I began to plan. Not revenge, not cruelty, but justice. A quiet, steady justice. For once in my life, I wasn't going to save them. I was going to save myself. And when I did, they would understand what they had lost. The days after I told my daughter, "The family will pay it," were strangely quiet. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel chained to someone else's panic. I still woke at 5 every morning out of habit, but instead of racing off to work or answering someone's call for help, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sun rise over the cracked pavement of my neighborhood. The air smelled of damp earth and gasoline, the same smell I'd known for years driving to roofing sites, but now it felt different. I realized I had lived most of my life in service to others, never pausing to ask what I wanted. At 58, I was finally learning that silence could be a weapon. When my daughter called again that week, I didn't answer. Her voice filled my voicemail. "Dad, please. We're drowning here." The old me would have called back instantly, would have promised to figure something out, even if it meant breaking my own back again. But I let the message sit there. I listened to it once, twice, then deleted it. For the first time, I gave myself permission not to rescue her. It felt wrong, almost cruel, but at the same time, it was the first breath of freedom I had taken in years. I started to look around my house with different eyes. The leaky faucet in the kitchen that I had ignored for months, the peeling paint on the porch railing, the stack of unpaid bills, all things I had put aside because my energy was always spent on someone else. I picked up a brush and painted the railing white again. I fixed the faucet. I cleared out boxes in the attic filled with memories I had been too scared to face. In one, I found old letters my daughter had written me when she was little, scribbled notes in crayon saying, "I love you, Daddy," or "You're my hero." I sat on the floor with those letters in my hands and cried, not because I was broken, but because I finally understood. The little girl who loved me unconditionally was gone. What stood in her place now was a woman who measured my worth in dollars. Vincent tried to confront me once. He showed up in his shiny black SUV, wearing a suit that looked more expensive than my monthly mortgage. He didn't come inside. He stood on my porch like he owned the ground under his shoes. "Mr. Whitman," he said stiffly, "I know you care about your daughter. But you need to understand, if the bank takes our house, It's going to ruin her credit, her life." His voice carried that same pity I had seen in his eyes years ago, the kind of tone rich men used when speaking to those they thought beneath them. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just looked at him and said, "If you cared about her as much as I do, you'd have made sure she never had to beg me for help." His jaw tightened, his face flushed, and for the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Fear. He expected the tired old man who always gave in. Instead, he met someone he didn't know how to handle. He left without another word, slamming his car door so hard it rattled the windows. That night, I sat at the kitchen table again, but this time I wasn't drowning in memories. I was planning. Not revenge, not punishment, something better. I wanted to leave behind a legacy that showed who I truly was, not the version they dismissed. If my daughter had chosen to erase me from her wedding, then I would write myself into a story she could never ignore. I thought about my pension, my retirement account, the money I had left after paying for that ghost of a wedding. I thought about the people who had stood by me when she hadn't, neighbors, old friends, even Mrs. Callahan across the street, who brought me casseroles when my back gave out last winter. Maybe family didn't mean blood after all. Maybe it meant something bigger, something chosen. One morning, I went to the bank, not for her, but for me. I sat across from a young advisor in a Navy suit, explaining that I wanted to restructure my savings. "Are you preparing for your children's inheritance?" he asked with a polite smile. I shook my head. "No. I'm preparing for my life. My children will inherit my choices, not my money." The advisor looked startled, maybe even impressed. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't apologizing for existing. I was claiming what was mine. Word must have spread, because within days, my daughter showed up again. This time she was angry, not desperate. "How can you do this to me?" she demanded, standing in my living room like she still had the right to raise her voice in my house. "You're my father. You're supposed to help me." Her words hit me hard, but not the way she thought. She didn't say she loved me, or that she missed me. She said I was supposed to help her, like I was nothing more than a tool. I stood slowly, my knees aching but my back straight. "I've helped you your whole life," I said evenly. "I gave you everything I had. And when you had the chance to honor me, you shut the door in my face. You call that family? Because I don't." She went silent, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. Vincent wasn't with her that time. She was alone, and for the first time, she looked small in front of me. Not because she was my child, but because she had lost the only thing that ever made her strong, my support. After she left, I sat in the quiet and realized something important. I wasn't broken anymore. I wasn't the man staring at empty chairs in wedding photos. I was the man who had survived decades of loneliness, hard labor, and abandonment, and still stood tall. My scars weren't weaknesses. They were proof that I had carried the weight of the world and lived to tell the tale. In the weeks that followed, I started small. I joined a local veterans group at the community center, even though I had never served. They welcomed me anyway, saying scars from life were just as valid as scars from war. I started helping kids in the neighborhood fix their bikes, patch their fences, teaching them the things no one had taught me. They called me Mr. H, and for the first time in years, laughter returned to my house. Every time my daughter called, I let it go to voicemail. Every time Vincent drove by, glaring at my porch, I waved with a smile. It wasn't spite, it was freedom. I was showing them that my world didn't revolve around theirs anymore. And as my world grew brighter, theirs grew darker. Friends whispered to me that the bank was circling closer, that Vincent's business deals weren't working out. I didn't celebrate their downfall, but I didn't stop it either. One evening, as I locked up the house, I caught sight of the sky glowing orange with sunset. For the first time in years, I felt peace. Real peace. My life wasn't over, it was beginning again. And somewhere deep down, I knew this was only the silence before the storm. Because when the reckoning finally came, when they realized the full weight of what they had thrown away, I would be ready. And they would never forget it. It started with whispers. In small towns like Columbus's suburbs, bad news spreads faster than fire in dry grass. At the diner where I sometimes went for coffee, two older men in ball caps leaned over their pancakes, muttering about Vincent. "That boy's business ain't looking too good," one said. "Word is, the bank's been sending letters." I stirred my coffee quietly, pretending not to listen, though my heart thudded. For years, I had been the one whispered about, the single father struggling, the man whose wife left, the old worker still climbing roofs when his body was breaking down. Now the whispers weren't about me. They were about them. The foreclosure notices came next. Not to my house, but to theirs. My daughter's dream home, the one with a big porch, shiny shutters, and the kind of kitchen she used to fantasize about when we watched cooking shows together, was under siege. They had bitten off more than they could chew. A mortgage too heavy, cars too expensive, credit cards stretched thin from their lavish wedding and the image they were desperate to project. I didn't see the letters myself, but I heard from neighbors, from mutual acquaintances. And then, finally, from her. She showed up at my door one rainy Thursday. Her hair was soaked, her mascara smudged, her voice trembling. "Dad, they're taking the house," she whispered. "We've tried everything. Vincent's parents won't help, the bank won't budge. We don't know where to go." Her eyes searched mine, desperate, pleading. And for a moment, just a moment, I saw the little girl she once was, the child who clung to me during thunderstorms. My heart ached, but I didn't let it crack open this time. I kept my face steady, my voice calm. "You have each other," I said. "That's what marriage is for. You chose him, and he chose you. Figure it out together." Her mouth opened, then shut. Anger flashed across her face. "So that's it? You're just going to let me be homeless?" "No," I replied softly. "I'm letting you learn." She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. I sat in the quiet after she left, staring at the coffee cup in my hands. It wasn't easy, choosing not to save her. But for once, I wasn't the one who had to carry the weight of her decisions. Meanwhile, my own life was shifting. The veterans group I joined had started meeting twice a week. They welcomed me even though I wasn't military. "You fought your battles," one of the men said. "That's enough." Together, we fixed up a local playground, repainting the swings, patching broken boards. Kids from the neighborhood cheered when they saw it, their laughter like a balm on my tired soul. For the first time in years, I felt useful in a way that wasn't tied to money. My worth wasn't in what I could give away, it was in who I was when I stood with others. Mrs. Callahan, my neighbor, became another anchor. She had lost her husband 10 years ago and often sat alone on her porch with her knitting. I started bringing her groceries, not out of obligation but out of kindness. We shared dinners sometimes, talking about the old days, about regrets, about the strange way life circles back on itself. She told me, "Family isn't always blood, Harold. Sometimes it's the ones who stay when everyone else leaves." I realized then that I hadn't been abandoned. I had been set free to find something better. But freedom doesn't shield you from guilt. Late at night, lying in my bed, I still heard my daughter's voice, still saw her tears. The father in me wanted to run to her, to shield her from pain. Yet the man I was becoming knew that shielding her again would only chain me tighter. So I let the guilt sit heavy on my chest, a weight I had to carry, but not one that would crush me. One Saturday, as I worked on fixing my porch steps, Vincent came back. He didn't look polished this time. His tie was loose, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. He stood at the bottom of my steps, hands trembling. "Look, I know I've been distant," he muttered. "But I need your help. I can't let her lose that house. It'll destroy her." I set down my hammer and looked at him. For the first time, I didn't see pity in his eyes. I saw panic, fear. The kind of fear I had lived with my whole life, the fear of losing everything. He was finally tasting what I had swallowed for decades. "Do you love her?" I asked. He blinked. "Of course I do." "Then stand with her," I said. "Figure it out. That's your job now, not mine." He stared at me like I had struck him. "You're her father." "Yes," I said. "And that used to mean I carried everything. But now she has you. So carry it." He left without another word. And for the first time, I didn't feel small in his shadow. He felt small in mine. The weeks dragged on. Their house was listed for foreclosure. Their cars disappeared one by one, repossessed by the bank. The photos they used to post online, dinners at fancy restaurants, vacations I knew they couldn't afford, stopped. Instead, their windows stayed dark, their lawn overgrown. The castle they had built on sand was collapsing. And though it pained me, I didn't rush to stop it. Meanwhile, my own world grew brighter. The kids from the neighborhood started calling me Grandpa H. They'd knock on my door, asking me to fix their bikes, to tell them stories about back in the day. Laughter filled my house again. Mrs. Callahan and I started attending community events together, and sometimes I caught myself smiling in a way I hadn't in years. I wasn't rich. I wasn't powerful. But I was alive, and I was finally living for me. Then came the breaking point. My daughter showed up one night, not angry this time, not demanding. She was broken. Her clothes were wrinkled, her eyes hollow. She sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I had once helped her with homework, and whispered, "We lost the house. We don't have anywhere to go." I swallowed hard. The father in me screamed to reach across the table, to take her hand, to tell her she could come home. But another voice, the voice I had silenced for years, spoke louder. "You had a home here once," I said gently, "and you chose to leave it." Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't know what I was doing. I thought he could give me everything you couldn't. I leaned back, the words heavy on my tongue. And did he? Her silence was answer enough. The clock on the wall ticked loudly as we sat there, two broken people facing each other. I knew this moment would change everything. Either I would bend again, or I would stand firm and let her face the storm she had chosen. And as I looked at her, I realized the storm wasn't coming. It was already here. The night my daughter sat across from me at the kitchen table, confessing that she and Vincent had lost their home, I barely slept. Her words echoed in my head. Asterisk, I thought he could give me everything you couldn't. Asterisk, those words were sharper than knives, because they carried the truth I had always feared, that no matter what I gave, it would never be enough. I walked the floorboards of my house, each creak a reminder of how much life I had carried on my shoulders. This small, crooked home wasn't perfect. The roof leaked when it rained too hard, the wallpaper in the hallway was peeling, and the furnace rattled in the winter. But this house had survived. It had raised her, held her laughter, soaked in her tears, and endured storms that would have torn others apart. And in its own quiet way, it had stood tall, just like me. At dawn, I sat with a cup of coffee, watching the light spill over the street. My daughter was still asleep in the guest room. She hadn't asked if she could stay, she had simply collapsed there, exhausted. For years, I had dreamed of her coming home, but not like this, not as a woman stripped of pride, hollowed by choices, clinging to the father she had once discarded. When she finally woke, she stood in the doorway like a child again, her voice trembling. "Dad, I don't know what to do." I studied her carefully. Her hair was tangled, her face pale. She wasn't the radiant bride from the photos online. She was the girl I had carried on my shoulders at the county fair, the teenager who used to fall asleep in the passenger seat of my truck after long drives. For a fleeting moment, my heart screamed to hold her, to promise her everything would be okay. But another part of me, the part that had been ignored, stepped on, used, held me back. "You figure it out," I said softly. Her face crumpled. "I can't." "Yes, you can," I replied. "You just don't want to." The silence between us was unbearable. I had never spoken to her like that before. My whole life had been about softening blows, making her path easier. But this time, I wasn't moving the stones from her road. I was letting her trip, because maybe the fall would teach her what my sacrifices never did. Later that day, Vincent came. His arrogance was gone, replaced with desperation. He didn't come in, he paced the porch like a caged animal, his eyes bloodshot. "Mr. Whitman," he stuttered, his voice low, "I need your help. Please. I can't let her suffer for my mistakes." I folded my arms. "It's too late for that." He shook his head violently. "No, it's not. I'll work, I'll pay you back, I'll do anything. Just don't turn your back on us now." For the first time, I almost pitied him. He had built his pride on sand, and now the tide had washed it away. But pity was dangerous. Pity had kept me chained for decades. So I asked him the question that had been burning in my chest. Did you ever really love her, Vincent? Or did you love the way she made you look? His face twisted, anger flashing. Don't talk to me like I'm some kind of monster. I married her because I loved her. Then prove it, I said. Stand beside her without money. Stand beside her when the world doesn't applaud. That's what marriage is. If you can't, then you never loved her to begin with. He didn't answer. He just stood there, jaw tight, fists clenched, and then walked away. Watching him go, I felt no satisfaction. Only clarity. My daughter had chosen him, and now she had to live with what that choice meant. But that night, as I sat on the porch under the fading light, I realized something important. If I let them drown completely, I would lose her forever. Not because she would hate me, but because she wouldn't survive it. She was broken in a way I hadn't expected, stripped of the illusions that once shielded her. And while she needed to learn responsibility, she also needed to know one thing, that despite everything, her father still had her back. Not as a wallet, not as a servant, but as a man who had weathered storms bigger than this one. The next morning, I made a decision. Not to save them, but to set terms. When she came down to the kitchen, her eyes swollen from crying, I slid a cup of coffee toward her. You can stay here, I said. But not for free. You'll contribute. You'll work. You'll learn how to stand on your own 2 feet. Her head snapped up. Work? Dad, I don't even. I cut her off. You'll find something. I don't care if it's at the diner, the grocery store, or cleaning houses. If you live under this roof, you'll contribute to it. Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time in years, she didn't argue. She just nodded, quietly. And Vincent, I added. What about him? She asked. He's not welcome here unless he's willing to do the same. If he wants to prove himself, he'll get his hands dirty like I did. Otherwise, this house isn't his to walk into. She looked down, twisting her fingers together. He won't like that. Then he won't come, I said simply. It wasn't cruelty. It was the truth. And the truth had been missing from her life for too long. Days turned into weeks. She found a job at the grocery store down the road, stocking shelves. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. Every night she came home exhausted, her back aching, her hands sore. And every night, I bit back the words that wanted to spill from me. Asterisk, now you know. Now you understand. Asterisk instead, I just let her sit at the table with her head in her hands, learning in silence what it meant to survive. Vincent showed up once, dressed down in jeans and a t-shirt, asking if he could stay. I told him the same thing I told her, work or go. He glared at me, muttered something under his breath, and left. Weeks passed, and he didn't return. Slowly, I saw it dawn on her. He wasn't the man she thought he was. He was a shadow of a dream that had never been real. One evening, after her shift at the store, she sat across from me at the kitchen table, her voice breaking. I'm sorry, Dad, she whispered. For everything. For the wedding, for the things I said, for forgetting who you are. I swallowed hard, staring into my coffee. Forgiveness had lived in me for years, waiting for this moment, but it wasn't something I could just hand over like loose change. It had to mean something. You don't have to apologize to me, I said quietly. You have to live differently. That's how you show me you're sorry. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Not the fragile hope that things might magically get better, but the solid kind, the kind built on truth, on work, on respect. But as much as she was beginning to change, I knew one thing. Vincent wasn't done. He was out there, licking his wounds, his pride shattered. Men like him don't disappear quietly. They strike back, even when they've already lost. And deep down, I knew his return would test everything we had just begun to rebuild. It was late afternoon when the knock came. Heavy, impatient, the kind that rattled the old wooden door. My daughter was upstairs, folding laundry in the guest room. I knew before I opened it who stood on the porch. Vincent. He looked thinner than I remembered, his expensive watch gone, his hair unkempt. He wore the same pair of jeans he had stormed off in weeks ago, but they were dirted now, frayed at the knees. His eyes burned with a strange mix of desperation and defiance. "Mr. Whitman," he said, his voice strained, "we need to talk." I didn't move from the doorway. "We already talked. You made your choice." His jaw tightened. "I didn't come to fight. I came for her. She's my wife." "Your wife is inside," I said evenly. "But she's rebuilding her life. On her terms. If you're here to drag her back into the mess you created, turn around." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "You think you're protecting her, but you're not. You're making her weak. She belongs with me. That's how it's supposed to be." I almost laughed, not out of humor but disbelief. This man, even with nothing left, still clung to the illusion of control. "She doesn't belong to anyone," I said firmly. "Not you. Not me. She belongs to herself." At that moment, my daughter's footsteps echoed on the stairs. She froze when she saw him. Her breath hitched, and her hands gripped the railing as if it might keep her upright. "Vincent," she whispered. He turned toward her, his face softening instantly. "Clara, I've missed you." Her lips trembled. She didn't move closer, but she didn't run either. "Why are you here?" "Because we can fix this," he said quickly. "I know I messed up, I know I hurt you, but we're stronger together. Remember our vows? For better or worse. This is the worse. We can get through it." Her eyes flickered, torn between longing and suspicion. I could see her heart pulling her one way while her scars pulled her another. "Vincent," she said slowly, "you left. You didn't call. You didn't fight for me." His face hardened. "I was ashamed. Do you know what it's like to fail in front of everyone? To lose everything and feel the world laughing at you?" I stepped in. "You didn't just fail, Vincent. You lied. You played pretend until the curtain fell, and then you ran. That's not shame, that's cowardice." He shot me a glare. "Stay out of this. This is between me and my wife." "No," I said, my voice low but sharp. "It became my business the day you decided to humiliate her, and me, and this family. And it'll stay my business until she's strong enough to stand without either of us." For a moment, silence hung heavy between us. Then Clara spoke, her voice shaking. "If you want to prove you've changed, Vincent, then do it. Get a job. Show me you can stand without leaning on me or Dad. Until then, I don't know if we have anything left." Vincent's eyes widened, as if he hadn't expected resistance. "Clara, please. Don't listen to him. He's poisoning you against me." "No," she said quietly. "He's protecting me from the truth I didn't want to see." That was the breaking point. Vincent's face twisted in fury, his composure snapping. "You think you're better than me now? Because you're stocking shelves and hiding in your daddy's house? You're nothing without me." Clara flinched. My chest tightened with rage. I stepped forward, my voice like steel. "Get off my porch, Vincent." He squared his shoulders. "Or what?" "Or you'll learn the difference between a man who talks and a man who stands," I said. For a second, I thought he might swing at me. His fists clenched, his body tense. But then he glanced at Clara again, her tears streaming down her face, and something inside him faltered. He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "You'll regret this," he spat. "Both of you." Then he stormed off, his footsteps echoing down the sidewalk until the night swallowed him. When the door closed, Clara collapsed into a chair, sobbing. "I almost believed him again," she whispered. "Why do I still want to?" I sat across from her, my hands folded. "Because you loved him. Love doesn't switch off just because it should. It lingers. It tricks you. But love without respect is just a chain." She buried her face in her hands. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to let him go." "You are," I said quietly. "You've already started. Every day you work, every day you stand on your own 2 feet, you're proving it. He wants you weak because weak is what keeps him powerful. But you don't owe him your weakness anymore." She nodded slowly, though doubt still lingered in her eyes. That night, after she went to bed, I sat on the porch again, staring into the darkness where Vincent had vanished. I knew men like him didn't disappear quietly. He would be back. Not for her, not really, for himself. Because losing her meant admitting he wasn't the man he pretended to be. And pride like his didn't die easily. The following days proved me right. He began calling her phone, leaving voicemails that swung from sweet apologies to angry threats. He sent flowers to the house, which I tossed straight into the trash. He waited outside the grocery store where she worked, trying to corner her. Each time, she resisted, but each time, I saw the toll it took on her. One evening, she sat beside me on the porch, her face pale. "Dad, what if he doesn't stop? What if he never lets me go?" I placed a hand on hers. "Then we'll show him he has no power here." "Not anymore." But deep inside, I knew the truth. This wasn't just about Clara anymore. It was about me. About the years I had spent bending, giving, sacrificing, only to be discarded. About the wedding I had paid for but never attended. About the decades of work no one seemed to remember. Vincent was more than a mistake in her life. He was the embodiment of every moment I had been taken for granted. And if I didn't stand firm now, then all of it, every sleepless night, every dollar sacrificed, every silent ache, would have been for nothing. The storm wasn't over. It was just beginning. And when Vincent came back, and I knew he would, I would be ready. The first time I saw Vincent waiting outside the grocery store, I thought it was a coincidence. He leaned against his car, arms crossed, eyes locked on Clara as she pushed a cart toward the parking lot. She froze when she saw him, her body stiff as stone. He smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the kind that makes your stomach drop. She walked faster, head down, pretending not to see him. But he stepped in front of her cart, blocking her path. I was parked on the far end of the lot, watching. My chest tightened as I reached for the door handle. Their voices carried through the air. "Clara, stop avoiding me," he said. "I told you it's over, Vincent. Leave me alone." "You don't mean that." His smile widened. "You still love me. I can see it." She shoved the cart around him, but he grabbed her wrist. That was when I moved. My boots hit the pavement hard as I crossed the lot. My voice thundered before I even reached them. "Let her go." Vincent turned, startled. His grip loosened, and Clara yanked free. When I reached them, I stood nose to nose with him, my body trembling with controlled rage. "You don't touch her," I said, each word sharp as glass. Vincent sneered. "You think you scare me? You're just an old man clinging to his pride." "Maybe," I said. "But this old man doesn't run. And I sure as hell don't take what isn't mine." For a moment, I thought he'd swing. His jaw flexed, his fists clenched. But then he laughed bitterly, stepping back. "This isn't over. She's my wife. You can't erase that with your lectures." Clara grabbed my arm. "Dad, let's go." We left him standing there, his car engine rumbling as he watched us drive away. But even as we pulled out of the lot, I could feel his eyes burning into the back of my neck. That night, Clara paced the kitchen, her voice shaking. "He's not going to stop. He's going to keep following me. I don't know what he'll do." I stood by the window, watching the empty street. "Then we'll be ready," I said. "Ready for what?" she asked. "For the storm," I said simply. Days turned into nights, and Vincent's presence grew like a shadow. Anonymous notes slipped into the mailbox. Late-night calls with nothing but breathing on the other end. A bouquet of wilted roses left on the porch with a note scrawled in messy handwriting. "You'll be mine again." Clara grew pale, her hands trembling whenever the phone rang. She wanted to call the police, but fear of escalation kept her frozen. "What if it just makes him angrier?" she whispered. I looked her in the eye. Sometimes anger is the only way to bring the truth into the light. But I also knew this wasn't just about Clara. It was about me. Vincent represented every unspoken word, every wound I'd swallowed. He was the mirror of all the people who had taken and taken, believing I would never stand. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Vincent came back. He didn't knock. He stood at the edge of the yard, hands in his pockets, staring at the house like a predator waiting for its chance. I stepped onto the porch. "Leave," I called. He smirked. Not until I get what's mine. She's not yours, I said. Not anymore. She'll always be mine, he snapped. You think she'll really choose stocking shelves and hiding behind her daddy forever? She belongs with me. Clara appeared in the doorway behind me, her voice trembling but strong. No, Vincent. I belong to myself. And I'm done with you. For a moment, his mask cracked. His eyes widened, his jaw fell. Then rage consumed him. He stormed forward, shouting, "You're making a mistake. He's turned you against me." I stepped off the porch, meeting him halfway in the yard. "No, Vincent. You did that all on your own." He shoved me hard, his spit flying as he snarled. "You ruined everything. You and your pathetic lectures. You think you're a man? You're nothing but a bitter old fool." I stumbled but didn't fall. Instead, I straightened, taller than I had in years. Maybe I am old. Maybe I've been a fool. But I'm no coward. And I don't run. For a split second, the world held its breath. Clara gasped behind me. Vincent's fist twitched, his rage boiling over. But then something unexpected happened. He broke. His knees buckled, his shoulders shook, and tears spilled down his face. "I had it all," he whispered. "And now I'm nothing." I stared at him, stunned. Clara's eyes widened with pity, but I raised a hand, stopping her. "Don't," I said softly. "This isn't about saving him. This is about saving yourself." Vincent looked up at me, his face twisted with pain. "Why do you get to win? Why does she choose you over me?" I leaned closer, my voice low. "Because I never made her choose. Love isn't a chain. It's a gift. And you never understood that." He sobbed, clutching his head, then staggered back toward the street. "This isn't over," he muttered. "It'll never be over." We watched him disappear into the night, his shadow swallowed by the darkness. Clara collapsed into a chair on the porch, her whole body shaking. "I don't know if I can take much more, Dad. What if he comes back? What if he hurts you?" I sat beside her, placing a steady hand on hers. "Then he'll learn that storms don't break me. They build me." She leaned against me, tears soaking my shirt. And as the crickets sang in the night, I realized something powerful. I wasn't just fighting for her. I was fighting for every piece of myself I had ever lost. But deep down, I knew the storm hadn't passed. It was gathering strength, waiting for one final strike. And when it came, we would either stand or fall together. Perfect timing. Chapter 8 is the grand finale. This is where everything Harold has endured, sacrifice, heartbreak, betrayal, culminates in a final confrontation with Vincent, but the victory must be poetic, not petty. It's not about fists or revenge. It's about Harold proving through quiet strength, wisdom, and dignity that true love and family are not bought, controlled, or manipulated. Clara must also rise fully here, showing she's learned. Here's Chapter 8, /1500 words. Chapter 8, The Final Stand. The night of the storm, the sky cracked open. Rain pounded against the windows, wind howled through the trees, and thunder shook the earth. It was as if the world itself had been waiting for this moment. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the old clock on the wall. Clara was upstairs, her room light glowing faintly through the hall. I knew she wasn't sleeping. Neither was I. Both of us were listening, for the sound of footsteps, for the inevitable knock, for the storm that wasn't only outside. It came just after midnight. A pounding on the door, louder than the thunder, relentless. "Clara!" Vincent's voice bellowed through the rain. "Clara, open this door." I rose slowly, my chest heavy but steady. She appeared at the top of the stairs, her face pale, her hands trembling. "Dad." "Stay there," I said firmly. I opened the door. Vincent stood soaked to the bone, his hair plastered to his forehead, his eyes wild. He looked less like a man and more like a storm given flesh. "Where is she?" he demanded. "She's not yours to command," I said calmly. He shoved past me into the house. "Clara!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the walls. Clara came down the stairs, her body shaking but her chin lifted. "I told you, Vincent. It's over." his face contorted, his voice cracking. "No. You can't just walk away from me. We're married, you made vows." Her eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady. "I made vows to love, honor, and respect. But you don't understand those words. And a marriage without them isn't a marriage at all." Vincent froze, his eyes darting between us. "So this is it. You're choosing him, your old man, over me." I stepped forward, my voice low but cutting through the storm. "She's choosing herself. Something you never let her do." For a moment, I thought he might break again like he had before, collapse under the weight of his own failures. But instead, his rage boiled over. He lunged toward the stairs, toward her. Instinct surged through me. I moved, blocking his path. "Don't," I said. He sneered. "You think you can stop me?" "No," I said. "I know I can." The silence was deafening. The rain battered the windows, thunder rolled. He searched my eyes for weakness, for the old Harold who bent and broke to keep peace. But that man was gone. What he found instead was a wall he could not climb. He swung his fist. It connected with my jaw, pain exploding through my face. Clara screamed. But I didn't fall. I stood firm, staring into his eyes. "That's all you've got," I said quietly. His fist trembled. His breath came in ragged gasps. And then, for the first time, I saw it, the fear in him. Not fear of me, but fear of the truth. Fear that he couldn't control her anymore. I didn't hit him back. I didn't need to. I just stood there, bleeding but unbroken. "You can scream, you can punch, you can threaten," I said, my voice steady. "But you can't win. Because winning isn't about breaking someone else. It's about building something that lasts. And you never built anything. You only destroyed." Vincent's hands shook. He looked at Clara, his voice cracking. "You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back. You'll see, without me, you're nothing." Clara stepped down the stairs slowly, her tears glistening but her voice like steel. "No, Vincent. Without you, I'm finally free." The words hit him harder than any punch could. His face crumpled, his body sagged, and for the first time, he looked truly small. He staggered toward the door, muttering curses, his shadow swallowed by the rain. And just like that, he was gone. Clara ran to me, her hands trembling as she touched my face. "Dad, you're bleeding." I smiled faintly. "Takes more than that to knock me down." She laughed through her tears, then broke into sobs, burying her face against my chest. I held her, feeling the weight of years lift from my shoulders. For the first time, she wasn't just my daughter. She was my equal, scarred, stronger, and finally awake. The storm outside raged on, but inside, there was peace. In the weeks that followed, Vincent never came back. Whether he found another target for his pride or finally collapsed under the weight of his own emptiness, I didn't know. And I didn't care. He was no longer our storm to weather. Clara kept working. She saved her paychecks, learned to budget, learned to stand on her own 2 feet. Sometimes she stumbled, but she never asked me to catch her. She asked me to walk beside her. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun set, she said softly, "Dad, I finally understand. You didn't just give me money. You gave me your years, your strength, your life, and I took it for granted. I don't want to be that person anymore." I looked at her, pride swelling in my chest. "Then don't. Build something real. Something that lasts." She nodded, tears in her eyes. And in that moment, I realized the victory wasn't in Vincent's defeat. It wasn't in standing tall when he tried to break me. It was in this, seeing my daughter finally see me, finally understand the love that had carried her all along. The storm had come. It had shaken us to our core. But we hadn't fallen. We had stood. And that was the kind of victory no one could take away. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.